talk about criminal things on my TikTok. It's just something I avoid. But I did do a deep dive into the Blinktwice movie that came out a few weeks ago on my extended Substack, so it's fresh on mind. And Diddy was just arrested yesterday on RICO charges, which I'm not the law either. I'm not a lawyer, but if you know about RICO charges, those are really, really hard to beat and prove innocence. Think about like Young Thug, who's been on trial for so long now. It's a RICO charge, and they involve anyone in your circle, because it's like a conspiratorial charge. Anyways, so I watched Blinktwice. I went to the movies by myself. I really, really liked it. And the premise of the movie is the billionaire Slater down here. Okay, look at the all dressed in white, throwing parties. Okay. He goes out and he parties and he sees like beautiful young women that he likes, and he invites them to his island, and they party there for a couple weeks. And the entire time that the women are there and partying with him and his friends, his like high profile friends, they have to wear all white. Okay. And I was just learning about Diddy and like what he was arrested for. Of course, it's been going around for a while now, but it sounds so similar to the movie Blinktwice. Like there's so many parallels. And Zoe Kravitz, it was her directorial debut. She grew up in Hollywood. She grew up in LA. Her dad is Lenny Kravitz. So what if she was like adjacent, or I don't know. It's just like, do you think that this movie was partly inspired by Diddy, or things that like she saw or heard about growing up so close to Diddy, like in the Hollywood sphere? Now, I could be wrong. I don't know. It's a fictional movie. I'm sure it's inspired by a lot of things, like Epstein being one of them. But it is a really fascinating thing, like the all white, the partying, like, I don't know. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are if you saw the movie. And do you think that we're going to see more media, or we're going to go back and hear more media, like music, movies, TV shows, and realize that it was people in Hollywood trying to raise the alarm bells about Diddy, but in like a sly way?
So me and my friends just saw the movie Blinktwice, which is a psychological thriller that was directed by Zoe Kravitz. If you haven't seen it yet, please don't watch this video because this is going to have a lot of spoilers. You know the craziest thing to me about the movie? I could not get over the fact, right, that at the very end of the movie, she decided to hold on to Slater, Channing Tatum's character. I understand why, right? Money, you know, she really wanted to extort him back. I get it. And she wanted to change her life. But if you paid attention to the beginning of the movie, and really even throughout the movie towards the middle before her best friend disappeared on the island, she never really cared about that friend. She never really liked that girl. It was very clear that she was willing to do anything possible, anything that she could to achieve a certain lifestyle. And capitalism affects us all, so I'm very weary to ever criticize a character for wanting money or for wanting better for themselves or for just being friggin' greedy, because you behaving that way isn't your fault, right? But if you pay attention in the movie, she said to her best friend, "I am tired of being invisible." I think it was less to do with money and more about status for her. And to me, the note that the movie was left on, with her married to Slater and still going to awards, you know, assuming that she is still living this billionaire life, keeping up appearances with him. I feel that when Frida realized what was happening on the island and she wasn't forgetting about all the disgusting things that was happening, she was definitely shocked and definitely upset. However, I think that the undertone that the movie may have been communicating to us is that it's a cycle, and that Frida was going to continue the traditions that were happening on that island. And what's also leading me to that conclusion is the fact that she had been there more than once. Why is that? She is drawn to the island constantly. Why? Because she's just that hungry for escapism. She's just that hungry to be anyone but herself. So I think it's just a really interesting view of somebody who's supposed to be the protagonist. To me, she's more of like a chaotic evil, chaotic good, chaotic neutral. I don't remember this from ELA. But definitely polarizing thoughts on Frida.
I think that this is going to be my last video on Blinktwice. I have made like 20 breaking down this movie. I've made a whole playlist if you're interested. But in this movie, I wanted to talk about all of the little menacing details that you might have missed when watching the movie. Spoiler warning ahead, obviously. One thing that immediately stood out to me after learning the full context of the movie and the fact that Frida has been to the island before is how short her hair is throughout the duration of the film. Although she doesn't remember her time on the island, it seems like somewhere deep inside she didn't want to have the long hair, because the last time that we see in the flashback, she got grabbed by her hair. And I'm assuming that just somewhere on the deeper level, she didn't want to have long hair anymore because of that. Also, in the very beginning of the movie, at the gala, I wonder if when she spots Slater and kind of starts walking towards him, if her tripping over is her body's reaction to seeing him and kind of sensing danger and wanting to not do that, essentially. Also, towards the beginning of the movie, when the women first get on the island, we get this gross scene of Frida finding a lip gloss in the little drawer. And I wonder if that was also a little act of rebellion from the badass maid, with her not clearing that room properly and leaving some sort of evidence in the room so that the next person could be warned about what's to come. Because as we find out, that was also Frida's lip gloss from when she was there last year. One other little detail that I've really enjoyed is in relation to Frida's nails, because as we know, when she was on the island the last time, she had red rabbits on her nails, and that's what the badass maid keeps shouting at her to try to trigger her memory. But as we know, in the context of this film, and is something that I've broken down before, the color red represents the memory loss, it represents the power of men over women, it represents danger. So this year, what she has on her nails is a blue cat. And blue, in the same context, kind of identifies the unity of women and women regaining power. Which again, in the use of color, I thought that was a really, really nice detail. Okay, please excuse the change in scenery. I remembered another moment as I was writing my script for a longer form video on this movie for YouTube. And that moment is after they have unalived Jess, because the boys decide to go on a fishing trip after Jess is already gone. And I think that the reason for that fishing trip was not just fishing, but also getting rid of Jess's body. Yeah, it's another detail that I kept wanting to mention but kept forgetting, so yeah, I'm including it here. But yeah, those are small details which I felt like weren't worth making their own video about, but what did...
The women are wearing white dresses with a bow tie on the back. I believe the white dresses were meant to symbolize the innocence that women are pressured to hold in order to be seen as desirable. But the more innocent and naive we are, the more likely we are to be preyed upon. The bow ties on the back of the dress, which represent girlhood and innocence, are weaponized against the women later in the movie, as that fabric is used to tie them into place or keep them from running away. At one point, Frida's character breaks out of the all-white uniform and she's seen wearing like a purple robe. I'm not sure where it came from, but I do think that this moment where she's wearing purple for the first time in the movie since appearing on the island was meant to symbolize that that was when Frida was beginning to break out of the conformity and was beginning to question the status quo on the island. Even when Frida and her new ally Sarah come up with a plan to get off the island, it's the first time that they're both wearing colored robes over their white dresses.
I saw Blinktwice last night, and hear me when I say, my cheeks are still clenched. Nothing could have prepared me for that last half hour. Listen, after Step Up, She's the Man, The Vow, I didn't think it would be possible for this man to leave me in a state of fear. But Channing Tatum held the charming yet unnerving psychopath down to a T. And I'm gonna need Naomi Aki and Adria Arjona to start in some next female boss heist movie, because I was so here for their scenes together. So for those not familiar with the plot, we have Slater King, played by Channing Tatum, who meets waitress Frida at a fundraising gala and invites her to his island. An island guaranteeing unlimited champagne, no responsibility, free outfits. You know she accepted that offer. But things start to go hella dark when they realise that what they're being fed is messing with their memory. The cadence in tension and suspense is simply sublime, like you're anxiously waiting at the edge of your seat, waiting for the ball to drop. And boy, when it does, and the themes of exploitation, privilege, forgiving and forgetting is just so powerful, and the way it weaves in celebrity culture and the patriarchy. Now, when I say that the vibrancy and high saturation in this movie was giving me High School Musical 2 vibes, but it contrasts the scary and sinister undertones that come into full force in the second half. Spoiler incoming, so fast forward this part if you haven't seen it. The scene where Channing Tatum's character repeatedly says, "I'm sorry." Don't get me wrong, it was realistic, it was scary, and I love the way he was kind of breaking the fourth wall. But this is how you know I'm getting to that chronically online stage, because how was I watching that scene and all I was thinking was, This is horrifying, but this has great TikTok sound potential. Zoe Kravitz, the visionary that you are. But I would advise watching something very light and fluffy before you go sleep, because I was in my bed watching Legally Blonde because I didn't want no venomous snakes appearing in my dream. If you know, you know.
Channels. So in this video we're going to be talking about the scene in Blinktwice that's very upsetting. So this is your spoiler warning and your trigger warning. We're going to be talking about subjects such as SA. So the conversation about the trigger warning for Blinktwice is an interesting one, because apparently when the movie initially came out it didn't have a trigger warning until people started saying that it probably should. It is also my understanding that the trigger warning wasn't in the beginning of the movie for some markets, while in others it was on screen for a while before the movie, and Warner Brothers also posted it on all of the social media channels and on the movie's own social media channels too. My personal opinion, I do think that the trigger warning was necessary just because the movie does depict very graphic scene of SA, so let's chat about that. Once the women on the island are affected by the venom from the snake that's native to the island that counteracts the effects of the flower, women start getting flashbacks of what has happened to them on the island during the nights, and it becomes clear that they have been assaulted on a nightly basis. Interestingly, we don't ever see Frida being explicitly essayed, but I do think that that was a conscious decision. However, we do see Sarah being very violently essayed. Not only that, but we also see women tied up, we see women tied down, we see women running away from danger. It's all very upsetting. I think obviously your sensitivity to those subjects would be affected based on your own life experiences, and I do think that it will be more sensitive to some people than others, but I do think that the trigger warning is necessary in this case, just because it can be very triggering for some people, especially with how graphic and visceral some parts of that scene were. My thoughts on the subject is that I do think that the trigger warning is necessary. One thing I will say is that in certain instances, you might buy the ticket before you even see the trigger warning. So if you spend your money and you go and you sit down in the cinema and then you see trigger warning, you might be in a position of, oh, I've paid already, I might as well just keep watching, and then you would still get upset. So I do think that perhaps the trigger warnings could have been more prominent for the sale, or even the age restriction for the film, because I believe it's aged 15 plus in the UK, and I'm not sure how appropriate that is, but I guess that's not for me to decide. But yeah, I do think that people's opinion on the subject would vary depending on their own experiences as well as their own sensitivities, but personally I did think that the trigger warning was necessary. What makes a very interesting point about the perfume in Blinktwice, so let's talk about it in this video, but first, spoiler warning ahead. So you're absolutely right, the women are not actually told to use the perfume in the beginning of the movie when they first get to the island. However, it uses a very interesting manipulation tactic, where in this room they're clearly given things to use, because they arrived on the island in their gowns after the gala, and they're given things like swimsuits, like dresses that are kind of more appropriate for the occasion. They're kind of just given the necessities, the things that they need for their time on the island, and perfume is right there, front and center. It's kind of that subtle manipulative implication that this is the part of the deal, this is the part of the package of being on the island, this is also something that you need to do, which is then kind of weaved into their routine. We kind of see through that montage of the island where every single day is very similar. They do the exact same things. So the use of perfume is kind of intertwined into that, where it starts to become normalized. It starts to become something that is kind of just part of the routine. So although no one tells them to use it in the beginning, it's interweaved into this whole experience to the point where it becomes the part of the routine. The forgetting becomes the part of the routine. And I thought that that aspect of manipulation makes it so much more menacing and so much more effective in the context of the film. But yeah,
has a scene so disturbing in it, Warner Brothers had to put out a warning. Blinktwice, directed by Zoe Kravitz, is a psychological thriller, and honestly, it is chilling. The movie essentially is about a woman and her friend who meet this millionaire and go with him to his island. This island is so luxurious. You get free clothes, free food, everything's paid for. There are 5 women on this island total, and I believe 6 men. And the women start to realize they're not remembering much of this island. They don't even know what day it is anymore. They don't remember how long they've been there. They don't remember what's happened. They're also waking up with random bruises, haircuts, and they just think to themselves, I feel like I'm having a good time, but I also don't feel like this is a good time. Main character's friend goes missing and no one remembers her. I will not reveal the twist of this film, but it was absolutely insane. And it really dives deep into the whole, you should not trust anyone whether they have money or not. For me personally, the ending did crash and burn and left more questions than answers. But do I think this is a great film? Absolutely. Was that scene that Warner Brothers had to put a warning out for absolutely terrifying? It was traumatic. But if you want to see the epitome of female rage, I definitely recommend checking out this movie.
Blinktwice has a very clear Garden of Eden metaphor running throughout the film, so let's talk about it in this video, but first, spoiler warning ahead. So Garden of Eden is a story of Adam and Eve who used to live in paradise until a snake convinces them to taste the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Before they taste the fruit, they're having a bliss, they're having a great time, completely unaware of the bad aspects of the world around them and themselves. But once they taste the fruit, they become aware of feelings such as guilt, shame, and fear. And the progression of the story is very similar in the flow of Blinktwice, where the women arrive at this like paradisical island where they're completely unaware of evil and they're having a great time until they interact with a snake that allows them to gain the knowledge of what is going on and the evils that are happening around them. Zoe Kravitz then takes it one step further with how it applies to the world that we live in nowadays, with how patriarchy is distracting women from the real issues of the world. So for example, how we see Frida being faced against Sarah for the attention of Slater King, and how we're initially rooting for Frida without realizing that there's a bigger issue there. And in the end of the day, they're only able to escape and they're able to survive because they unite against the common evil. I know that the messaging of this film has been considered to be a little bit on the nose for some people. However, I did find it to be quite effective in two types of messages. Number one, women shouldn't be pitted against each other, but rather work together towards a common goal. But number two, not using the perfume that is given to you, not falling for the promised glitz and glamour at the expense of you losing your identity and losing your memory and losing your passion and drive. But alongside this theme, there's a parallel one running in relation to the Slater's kind of apology and his whole monologue at the end, but I'm gonna make of the lighter in Blinktwice is so interesting to me, so let's chat about it. But first, spoiler warning ahead for the movie, obviously. So the lighter is something that we start seeing from the very beginning of the movie, when Jess, our main character's best friend, keeps offering it to her, and as we progress through the movie, it keeps reappearing. So what does it symbolize? I personally think that this lighter symbolizes the concept of memory, with how it keeps going missing during the time that the women spend on the island. Because before they get to the island, Jess is always in the possession of the lighter. She always knows where it is. But when they get to the island, it repeatedly gets lost day after day after day, where Jess has to ask people like, where's that lighter? Do I need to put my name on it? And when she eventually does, this lighter acts as a trigger for the women to start figuring out what's going on, because the name is on it and they try to pretend like Jess was never around. It's also very interesting in the choice of color, because the lighter is yellow, which could symbolize regaining your memory or could symbolize memory as a whole, and Jess is wrapped in yellow when she's starting to realize that something is wrong, that something is not adding up. But yeah, for all of the symbolism and all of the metaphors that are in this film, I really thought that the lighter is quite a prominent one, because it just keeps reappearing throughout the film, and I do really think that it symbolizes memory. The symbolism